Your body doesn't lie. The mind can take you only so far, and you can know the thing, but as soon as you go to do it, your body freezes up and goes, ah. It's cliche, and people are like, oh, enjoy the journey that you're on, right? And it's like, I don't fucking know what journey I'm on. You can write it down and you can see it.
Yeah.
And then when you see it and you're like, oh, this thing here with the tax debt and the family going like this and this thing happening and the business falling down and these 3 employees that left me when they were supposed to stay on. And all of this is teaching me skills to get me to the next phase in my hero's journey.
As men, we don't realize that this little boy is within you and he is hurt and he has not healed. And it is so important to go back and reconcile and heal with that little boy.
Go stand in front of a full body mirror, look at yourself, and notice when you're looking at yourself where your eyes try to divert. Do you love yourself or do you not? Do you like the guy that you see? Do you like the body that is reflected in the mirror? Because your body is just a reflection of... Joseph Campbell had this beautiful quote, and he just said, I believe a good life is just one hero's journey lived after the next.
Today we discussed how to become a better man, a man who has power, who's the king of his kingdom, a man who makes more money while also having freedom and time. Whether your relationship is currently breaking down, you're dealing with anger, guilt, shame, hiding yourself behind a mask as a successful man, or you just want to be a better person for the people around you, this episode gives you everything you need, the practical tools to set a new standard for your life. Corey Boutwell is an amazing guest who has helped so many men like you. If you want to be better, make sure you give this a watch all the way through. And at the end, we give you the simple strategy to create the life of your dreams. Make sure as well you give this a like, subscribe, comment down below so we can share this with more men. So Corey Boutwell, I'm so fucking excited today, man. We're going to be talking about setting the standard. There's so much to unpack there for being a better man, better husband, partner, father, business owner. And you have so many practical tips on how to dominate and crush it in business and fitness and life. And there's some shadow work as well we're going to talk about. So very exciting, man. Welcome to the pod.
Dude, thank you for having me. I'm excited to get into whatever we talk about today.
Amazing. So bro, like, let's just dive straight into it. What is it that you actually do and why do men need to listen to today's podcast?
Yeah. So what we do is we do a lot of shadow work, right? And I feel that a lot in relationships, men display and, want to be, I find like in the modern world, it's like men want to be able to talk about their emotions, but they can't, and they want to rely on their partners for it. However, it's the wrong place to be talking about their emotions because most of the time they get smashed in some way, shape or form. And as we, I think, get older and we get more connected and we fall more in love with a partner or whatever it is, we start to get these attachments. You're aware of the attachment styles, avoidant, anxious or avoidant. Yeah.
But other listeners won't be. They won't
Listeners.
have no idea. Yeah.
Okay. So there's so basically there's 2 ways you can go in a relationship where things get like, I say when things start developing unhealthy patterns, but they're going to come up regardless. And you're either a guy who under conflict will shut down, or you're a guy who under conflict will get a little bit needy, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have 100% self-security or you're sure of yourself, it makes it extremely difficult to be able to, let these things go. And then what happens is commonly in relationships, men who are focused in business will try to get all of their nurturing, their care and their needs from their partner because they're so focused in business and in work. They're just going 100 miles an hour in there. So then when it comes to the relationship, they think, oh, I just want to be able to tell her. I want to be able to, let my emotions out here. I want her to care for me and I want her to nurture me and X, Y, Z. And yes, we want that. And yes, we deserve it in some way, shapes and forms. However, there are some areas where we need to go and take the shit to the men, which we have forgotten about because our partners can only make us, experience empathy, experience pity. It only takes us to a certain level. But what we want to be is charged up. We want to feel our power. We want to get rid of our shame, our anger, and all the shit that holds us back, that keeps us closed off so that we can, open up and be better, stronger leaders who can inspire people better, connect with people more, and, really create a life, not that's just numbers, get this thing done, blah, 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 but actually feel a sense of fulfillment and confidence inside your body so that when you walk around, you feel like a strong man and you're like, yes, this is great. So essentially what we do is we extract that out of people and then we inject them with power. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So many business owners are wearing a mask, pretending like they're successful. I'm making money. We got the nice house, the nice car, the toys. Yeah. Why the fuck are you unhappy, wife? Why am I not getting laid? Why am I not having sex? when ultimately we forget that we're not that powerful man at home. Like, we're powerful in business, but we struggle to bring that home. And this is why so many men go down the path of divorce and lying to themselves for so long. My wife, Rosie, and I'd be crushing it in business, making money, come home, and I'd either want to share it with her or I'd bottle it up. But when I wanted to share it with her, I wouldn't say it to her. I'd want her to ask me, how was your day? Like, what happened today? And when she wouldn't, I'd get pissed off and triggered, and then I wouldn't communicate with her. It was chaos instead of peace. So you mentioned two styles, shut down and needy. Can you explain how this operates for most men listening? Let's say you're a high-performing man listening right now. How would this play out? Like, paint the picture of what that would look like so they can relate to it.
So to give them just an easy framework, I think I'm assuming most people would be familiar with nervous systems, right? When you have your flight, fright, and freeze response. Right? So your body doesn't lie. And what I've been learning a lot recently is that you can do all the mind work as well. Like, there's so much mind work that, that we teach and other people teach. But as you know, running retreats, that the mind can take you only so far, and you can know the thing, but as soon as you go to do it, your body freezes up and goes, or you like push back, or you want to get the hell out of somewhere. So in regards to avoidance or, being needy, it's just noticing how your body has been conditioned from when you were a child to how you respond in triggering situations. So essentially, like, you may come home and every single day the dishes may not be done, or something's not cleaned, or they didn't ask you, how your day was, or something like that.
Kids are screaming. There's just chaos going on at home. You've had a hardcore day at work, and then you get home, and then there's like, there's more problems to solve here. I've just been at war, and now I've got more problems to solve. So it's like, how does your nervous system respond? Because you're not in control of that, right? Your body is in control of that. And then you may shut down, might be experiencing, your partner might say something to you and you go, I'm not talking about this. I just want to go, right? I just want to go. I just need to get the hell out of here. I'm leaving. I'm going for a drive. Whatever it is, I'm out. So that's more shutting down and avoiding. Then freeze is just, you just have nothing to say. Your partner says something, you go numb. It's like this disassociation that happens. It's crazy. Like, I didn't really know what disassociation felt like until like the last year and a half. And just experiencing disassociation is like, it's really weird when you can grasp it, because you're like, I just disassociated and I'm just thinking about something else, or I need to talk about something else, and I've just gone. Right? So just to clarify, disassociation is when you just aren't there. You're there, but you're not there.
You're there, but you're not there. And your partner will tell you. That's when your partner's saying things to you like, you're not even here. You're not even listening to me. Like, what the hell? Like, you're not doing anything right now. And you're like, what do you want from me? You know what I mean? So when you get into those positions, you're disassociating. Then you've got fight, which is the pushback. No, I didn't. That wasn't me. That was you. So you're kind of going through the blame game or something like that, where you're getting really defensive, or you're feeling like you're being gaslighted, or you actually are being gaslighted, right? So a lot of this can come down to, for men, in terms of just like a practical tools to understand this, is just getting really clear on your boundaries and knowing that there's 3 types of boundaries that we have. There's mental, emotional, and physical. Now, most men have really good physical boundaries because we're strong, right? All men have, physiques. Most people, they've worked out, had experience working out beforehand. They work with their hands. They just get the physical thing. Like, we really understand it. But in terms of mental and emotional boundaries, we have no idea. And often we will sacrifice our thoughts, speaking our truth, speaking up, not speaking, sometimes just shutting up and not dumping on people. And we don't have the experience with being able to use words as well to communicate our emotional boundaries. And that's when shit can get crossed sometimes and things get a little bit difficult and sticky.
100%.
Just really quickly, if you're getting value from this podcast episode, I'd appreciate a massive favor. If you're watching on YouTube, give this a thumbs up, or if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other platform, give this 5 stars. It helps us reach more men, keep more families together, and get better guests onto the show. So if you're getting value, all that I ask is you take 5 seconds to give it a thumbs up or 5 stars so we can help more people and keep delivering you epic value.
As men, we bottle things up. Like, we're upset at our wife because the dishes aren't done. We're upset at our kids for not listening. We're upset at our team for not performing, but we don't know how to communicate it effectively. So we either bottle it up and then we explode like a ticking time bomb, or we share how we're feeling right away. But how do we do it? We play the blame game. You did this wrong. You didn't do this well. You didn't give me respect. You didn't do your job properly. It's like blame, pointing the finger. But as you know, when you're pointing one finger at somebody else, you got 3 pointing back at you. Mm-hmm. So how does a man who thinks he's successful and making money and providing, who also knows deep down that when he comes home, it's a fucking war zone, right? How does he stop blaming, and how does he go into a place of actually fixing these issues? Because this destroys relationships.
Yeah. It's a big question because I think it's really dependent on the scenario and situation, like per person.
Yeah.
But one thing that I know for sure that works is men, firstly, getting rid of their shame that they may have had throughout like their whole life.
What do you mean by that?
So if you start noticing that you start going through a control and release cycle, right? This is how, so control and release is fueled by shame. A controlled cycle will be, I need to wake up early. I need to sort my finances out. I need to be in bed this time. I need to control all of my eating. I need to go over all my finances, look at absolutely everything. I need to clean everything in the house. I need to sort this out. I need to be working out this time. I need to be making sure that I'm only eating this amount of calories. Then, when you do that and things get like just a little bit crazy, and then a release cycle is eating too much, drinking, gambling. It's holidaying for too long. All of those things that just like, oh, I just need to go and get out. Sometimes a release phase is like, oh, thank God I can just work for like 2 weeks. I don't have to think about anything else.
Yeah, numb yourself.
It can be like that. So, and they're both fueled by shame. Now, what's one thing every year that people do if they've been controlling all year, trying to get all their shit sorted, saving their money, where they have the biggest excuse to just release and get rid of everything?
At the end of the year?
Yeah.
Christmas?
Yeah.
New Year's? Yep.
It's their holidays.
Yep.
It's their 4-week holidays. It's their 2-week holidays. It's like, oh, I'm on holidays, I can drink. Oh, I'm on holidays, I can spend all the money. Oh, I'm on holidays, I can eat whatever it is that I want. And then they blow everything and they go, oh my God, that feels so good. And then get back into a control cycle all year. And then they start, sweeping everything under the rug and just like putting shit on. Now, just understanding that cycle of that happening can happen yearly, it can happen weekly, it can happen monthly, of just like, why can't I stick to something long enough? It's just fueled by shame. And this comes out of the book Facing Shame by Merle A. something. I can't remember. But in the book, it discusses and it talks about how to remove the shame. And essentially, shame is an emotion that wants to hide. And it gets stored in your body and your nervous system. So the more shame that you experience as a child, as a teenager, in your early 20s, the more that there is to let go of. And the only way to get rid of it is to be seen in it. However, that's scary as shit. Because if you're seen for your dark secrets, your dark past, whatever it is, whether it's like drugs, prostitution, stupid amounts of alcohol, there's a lot of sexual shame that comes up in regards to things that you did or may not have done in general. And as men, you pour all of this on. And then what happens is you find an avenue like work or something where you don't have to think about it, whatever it is. That's happened since you are a child, essentially, because you've conditioned yourself to like deal with the pain so you can protect yourself, right? Of whatever the shame may be. Oh, that was wrong. And that's when you notice people in a nervous system state, when they start thinking about their shame or talking about their shame, they start like looking down. Their eyes go down, their hands start covering their face. Even when they're tears and stuff, they're like, oh, I feel shameful around crying right now. I need to hide. Instead of like owning your shame and talking about it. So if you have a safe space of men who won't judge you, don't criticize you, who trust you, who believe in you, who see you in your power, and you can tell your shame from a place of dignity and strength, it leaves and it doesn't come back. So the next time that you're in an argument or there's a tiff or something in your relationship or even in your business, you know the things in your mind. You're like, okay, I get this formula, I get this thing, I know this thing that's coming up, I know what to say, I've learned the communication technique or whatever it is. Your body doesn't want to run away. You don't shut down and you don't go chasing your partner. You just go, okay. And you can say it from a regulated state.
That's so difficult for so many men though.
Bro,
like so many men feel this deep shame and guilt. When I yell at my 3-year-old daughter because I've had a stressful day, I feel like a piece of shit.
It's more.
When my wife and I get into an argument and I'm pointing the finger and I'm upset because she's not giving me respect or sex and I'm a dickhead. I had a stressful day. I feel so much shame. And then there's this story that goes on in my head. I'm laying in bed, my eyes wide open going, fuck, I did it again. I was that asshole. I'm letting my stress get to my family. But then we repeat that pattern. And this can go on for years and years. It destroys your relationships. One of the most powerful things that's helped me is really sitting down with my family when I do this. As soon as I do it, 5-10 minutes after I've done it and going to my daughter and saying, I'm so sorry. Daddy was upset. He felt stressed. He felt angry. He took it out on you. That's not okay. And you'll see my daughter come out and give me a hug and say, it's okay, Daddy, instead of hiding from it. But that takes courage. And I know there's going to be a lot of men listening right now going, I don't have any shame. Mate, I'm working my ass off. My wife's fucking not doing her job properly. All she has to do is make sure the kids don't die. Like, how does a man who's listening to this right now go, you know what? I actually do feel guilty. I do feel ashamed. I have some shit I haven't dealt with. How do you unpack that as a man?
Yeah. So, man, well, it comes with a sense of openness, right?
Yep.
So it's like you have to be ready. Things will only get so bad until you start to understand, like, okay, like I got to make a move here. And if you just know that you're going through a control and release cycle, or someone explains to you, okay, so, you know, your relationship hasn't been working for how long? You are getting angry. You get in those little times where you feel those sense of spite. We're just like, oh, you know what? Fuck you guys. You know, those feelings when you start waking up in the middle of the night and you're like, why do I keep waking up at 3 a.m? Or you're waking up tired every day, or you notice that you're getting bored, or your sense of fulfillment is just starting to go throughout the day. And you're like, man, why the fuck am I even doing any of this? I don't get it, right? So out of a sense of duty and loyalty and honor, us as men will stay in relationships and self-sacrifice ourselves and drag ourselves through the mud with our guts dragging behind us just because we feel a sense of duty towards someone or something. Yeah. And the second that you realize you're in that position, shame is the fuel. It's the fuel.
So you realize that, how do you then unpack it? Because if you're a busy guy and you're stressed out as fuck, like I agree with everything you're saying. Yeah. It's like, I get it, but like I've got a business to run. I've got a team to look after. I've got kids. I'm at the bottom of the barrel. How the fuck am I going to make time to deal with shame? Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have to talk to people. Like the smallest way about it is talking to people that you feel safe and trust around. Yeah. Like that's why I like men's groups, because there isn't any other, there's no way that, you know, you can go through yourself and it can take, you know, a long period of time of just like writing down some patterns of like, okay, what are these things that happened to me as a child that were negative experiences, whatever it is. And then you can start unpacking and digging and creating patterns till now. Yeah. Or you can just talk to some fucking dudes, man. You talk about the guys and you say, hey guys, I got some shit to get off my chest. I need to get rid of it. Like we've gotten to the point in our communities now, like in my community, when we jump on a call or in person, someone will go, all right, guys, I got shame to get rid of. And they'll just put a hand up. And then everyone knows what a shame thing is. And for the new people, we teach them like, all right, this guy's gone for a shame release. Everyone locks in, phones off, everything's away. Everyone's dialed in on a group call. And the guy's like, and he owns his shame. And he's like, all right, okay. Staunching up. He gets locked in, right? And then it's just like, and you know, you start notice emotions start happening. And we're like, relax, calm your nervous system, like calm down, speak what's on your mind, speak the thing. And we essentially just like coach people through being able to speak what is on their heart. And the second that it's gone, even though it's scary, they go, oh, fucking hell. Yeah. But like we do this in retreats as well. And we'll see people, you know, because we usually go first, right? So as facilitators, whenever there's a shame thing to create safety, if you want to know how to do it and you're like, fuck, I've been in the position because I went to a retreat and I remember they were like, we're releasing shame tonight and you're telling your deepest, darkest secrets. And I remember just thinking to myself, there's no fucking way in hell that I am sharing anything. Like I just felt this rage build up. Yeah. And then like a part of myself, the back of my head went, you know, you got to. Right? Yeah. Like, you know, you have to get rid of this. Yeah. And I built it up to be such a big deal. And when I come to releasing the shame, my mouth was like, yeah. Right. And it didn't work properly. And I didn't get the words out that I would have liked in such detail. Yeah. However, I got it out. And then straight after, it was just stuff that happened when I was a kid. I rung the people who were involved and I told them, and they were like, oh my God, Corey, we were kids. You know what I mean? When all this shit happened, blah, blah, blah. And this is stuff stemming back from then. Yeah. Right. Once that first initial big shame thing like went out and I shared it with people who I trusted and could talk to about it. Yeah. Then the next minute, all of my other shame that I felt like across my whole life, the same way as in the moment when you might have, been more aggressive to your daughter when you didn't want to be. And you say, hey, look, I'm sorry. I feel a lot of shame around that. I got angry when I shouldn't have. And you've owned your responsibility and your shame, then you feel better. But we've got a backlog of however much to get rid of. Yeah. And the second that we get rid of it and talk about it, we feel so much better. So we'll commonly get men come in, they're like, I've got like one thing to share. And then we'll go first and just go hard with all our sharing. And then they'll come in and go, all right, I'm going to do everything. And then they just, and all this shit just comes out their mouth. And then they're like, oh, thank God. But there's a little key and a secret here is you don't want to stay in that state, because once that you've gone through and you've shared shame, the rule is like you're in a low vibration. Yeah.
You're not like it's low and it's negative and it doesn't feel good. So you have to be lifted up. So, and then after that is, people can pour into you, they can cheer you up, they can talk to you, they can compliment you. So whatever it is, we just make sure that we lift everyone's energy up so that you can feel some power rush back in, because otherwise you leave someone in a state where they're like, oh, this is heavy and I'm like, nervous, right now, or just feeling a little bit off.
Yeah.
So the second that you can replace that as well, that's when someone has, a really good experience and they can go back to their life feeling more free, like freer than ever. Right. Yeah. But they have to understand this. And this is what's like, important in regards to facilitation shame stuff, because it takes a lot of finesse. And then, when you work through the emotions, it's like shame, guilt, anger, and then you eventually, anger converts to passion. And then after passion, you start to experience joy. And then you become a happy cunt, right?
Yeah. And that's something so many men lack.
Yeah.
It's powerful. There's so much to unpack here. I want to go into childhood, anger, shame, but I'll share a bit of a story about how this actually plays out. I cannot understate the value of looking into your childhood for being a better business owner, partner, father, and man. My father was abusive growing up. He didn't beat us, but he was loud. He was angry. He drank a lot. And one of my earliest memories is my father hitting my brother so hard. I was 4 years old. My brother was 2. He hit him so hard that I can still remember the sound of my brother's head hitting the wall. And then my parents separated after that. Every time we saw him, he was intoxicated, victim, blame game. Growing up, I blamed myself for that. I felt guilt, I felt shame, I felt anger, not at my father, at myself. And I didn't realize this. And then that came into my marriage. It came into how I showed up for my daughter, and it was destroying my relationships. And it wasn't until I was able to work through that little boy, that little Toni, who 30 years later was hurt, ashamed, guilty, afraid, angry, that my marriage got better, my business got better. And I think as men, we don't realize that this little boy is within you and he is hurt and he has not healed. And it is so important to go back and reconcile and heal with that little boy. So I think for men, a lot of successful men, business owners, providers don't realize that boy's in there. And that boy needs a hug and he needs some support, right? So let's talk about then anger, because shame and anger are closely linked. A lot of men don't know how to control their anger.
Oh yeah. Before we get into that though, I just want to say, like, did you know there was a study that was done that showed that, when you experience like your dad smashing your brother's head against a wall, that there is no difference on the impact of like trauma you receive between you and your brother if you're there.
It's wild.
It's literally it's exactly the same amount of like conditioning gets done to the brain.
It's insane.
Yeah,
because your brain doesn't know the difference, right? No. And this is the thing, as men, we don't realize how these little moments of our lives can really dictate who we are and how we show up. So it's very, very powerful you shared that.
Yeah.
So with the shame thing, like that's from our childhood. Let's talk about the childhood and let's talk about anger, and then let's talk about freedom, because I've got some really powerful stuff I want to ask you about freedom.
Okay, cool.
It's different types of freedom. So talk to me about that inner child, that shadow work, and how that turns into anger and shame.
Yeah. So essentially, like, anger is just your passion suppressed. So what I've come to realize is we do a lot of anger releases at our retreats. We help people move through anger a lot. A lot of anger can come from not feeling good enough or wanting to get something. And then when you don't get it, you can get angry around something, especially when it's like love. So I like to use the analogy of, if you're school and you're a kid and you're playing soccer or something and you went to go kick a goal and then some kid just come over and just grabbed you and tackled you down, which was like across the rules, and you're about to like kick the best goal of your life and you're like, oh yes, I can't wait to get this, is gonna be so good. And then they come and grab you and throw you down and you're just like, fuck you.
I remember an exact moment. I was playing rugby and I was going to score a try and this dude just ripped me to the ground. I had a fight with him. That just came up for me right now. That was like 30 years ago. Yeah. Probably 25 years ago.
Yeah, right? Because you're so passionate about this thing that you wanted to get. So next minute you get angry, right? Yeah. So you're like, oh no. So they're two sides to the same coin. And what I believe is that when you understand what your anger is, like most guys in a relationship, they just want love from their partner.
Sex, intimacy, respect.
Yep. Yeah. They want to be admired for the work that they do. They want to be appreciated for being the masculine man in the relationship, right? And when they don't get those things, they start getting angry. And it's the same thing. You notice in business, if something's not working how it's supposed to be working, the sales team aren't closing the sales, the workers aren't doing the things, they're not performing how they like, they're slacking off a little bit. It's like, I want my business to work so well and I want to pay you all handsomely, but I can't if you're not working hard. What the fuck? You start getting angry, right? And then, I internalize this because anger isn't safe. Anger isn't safe because a lot of men, Australian men, if they showed any anger, they got beaten around the head, right? If they showed any time of aggression, they got judged or criticized by other people's parents. This person, you were too boisterous, you were too much, you were too rough at school birthday parties or like whatever it is that happened. So when it comes to anger, we get these guys that are like, oh, I'm not that angry. I'm not that angry. And then next minute they blow their top off. Next minute they get frustrated and they go, I just got to like sit down and shut up. So what we like to do is just to get people to, feel safe within their anger and express it in a way which is not shown like anywhere, where you can just do it like, yourself, not in front of anyone, whatever it is, where you can like get rid of anger and feel it and then convert it into passion. So many times where it's like, okay, I have to feel this emotion, anger, to figure out where that I'm passionate, because you can do one anger release. It's not going to get rid of your anger. You're going to have the most beautiful experience, like, and just feel so cleansed for a while, but it's not going to get rid of it. What's going to get rid of it is understanding, okay, I'm angry because of this thing that I want, that I don't have yet currently. And then you convert the emotion of anger into passion and drive, and you start to take action towards that thing, regardless of what anyone else thinks. And that's like, it's just some good fuel, bro. I've seen people go from like, working with us, go from like $30,000 a month in a media agency to $300,000. I've seen people in real estate companies slap on like 40% of their, top revenue just because they got rid of anger and a little bit of shame. And they're just like, oh my God, thank you. And then they can just feel like they can be themselves and lead in a way that they wanted to lead. Yeah. And not have to worry about like, if I tell this person off or I say this thing to them, like, I'm going to hurt them or whatever it is. Yeah. So I need to tiptoe, be careful. Instead of just saying, hey, you're underperforming. I'd love it if you just kick some ass, like whatever it is that you need to say. And they go, oh, okay, let's go, without the fear of that.
Yeah, and being able to use it as fuel, it requires a deep level of awareness. We had an amazing neuroscientist at one of our events, Josie Thompson, and she framed it so well. She said, anger is only a problem when you direct it at other people, right? Cool. Yeah. So the way she framed it was, if you're upset at your partner, instead of going, what the fuck are you doing? And throwing that anger like a burning flame at them, what you can instead do is go, darling, I'm really angry at you right now. And your tonality doesn't sound angry, but it's like, it's condensed, it's fueled into the right direction. And if you can do this well in your business or your marriage or with your kids, they actually respect you more. Because you're not that grumpy cunt who's yelling all the time. When people feel attacked, they defend, even if they know you're right? Yeah. So it's like, hey, mate, like this is the third conversation we've had. What's going on? Because I'm starting to feel pretty upset at you. I'm a little bit angry. Like, are you okay? Yeah. See how powerful that is compared to like, mate, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, it's so powerful. But what I say is it'll be like a lot of guys that, we talk to will say, well, I can't fucking do that. Yet. So like, I can't. Yeah, right? Yet is definitely the thing. But the reason that they can't is just because their nervous systems are shot. Yeah. Right. You're not going to be able to hold down your anger if your nervous system is in a state of, it's sort of like, if you get a sore knee, right? You get a sore knee or a bad back, something like that, and you have this inflammation. It's the same thing with your nervous system. It feels this kind of like inflammation that is in your nervous system. And until you've allowed it to calm down by, just like talking to a bunch of lads, doing a bunch of healing and just some self-awareness around you and what you want, and actually directing some, love towards yourself and learning the tools and skills for that, which is just confidence. Is what it is. Self-love is literally just confidence. Yeah. You start feeling confidence and you start taking action aligned with what you want, and you experience integrity, because integrity for men is like, the whole, I understand from men's point of view, it's like, I don't want to write down the list, like, I love myself and loving my thing, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, loving yourself is just discipline and integrity. Yeah. That's what it is. And being able to handle as much discipline and integrity as you can. And when you start feeling that, your nervous system starts regulating, it starts calming down. Then when it comes to the trigger, you're like, I know what to say here. Yeah. I know what I do here. And I have the energy and I have the willpower to be able to do it. And that's like, when you get there, it's fantastic. Because I've been on both ends. I've been to the point where I've been like, oh, I've mastered this and this is fantastic. And I've been showing up like a G. And then I've seen my nervous system get wired and wired. So like a guitar string just getting like bang, just pulled and be like, whoa. And then I haven't been able to keep up as much as I'd like to. And I'm like, I know what to do here. Yep. Why can't I do it? I'm like, oh, my nervous system shot. I actually need to go take a week off.
Yeah, you're fried. And this is what most men are constantly fried. I think for anyone who says, I can't do that or that's too difficult, the best question to ask yourself is, how many repetitions have you done?
If you're getting value from this podcast episode and you want to learn how you can have a better relationship, a better marriage, you can be a better father, husband, the man you know your family deserves, then it's very fucking hard to do that just by listening and getting fed information. Sure, this is valuable, but what's much more valuable is having a custom roadmap and a custom plan. And that's exactly what we do here at The Empowered Man. So if you want to learn how to fix your marriage, reconnect with your children, and find work-life balance, then that's exactly what we want to help you with. We'll help you make more money, working less hours, have that life you deserve by becoming unfuckwithable. Just tap the link down below in the description and go and book a coaching session with my Empowered Man team. On that session, we'll build your custom Empowered Man roadmap to fix your marriage, reconnect with your children, find work-life balance, and have the life you deserve. Click the link down below right now.
I was coaching a client yesterday. He's doing about 800 grand profit a year in his business. So it's a pretty cool business. And he's been meditating, journaling, eating well, exercising. Everything's amazing. And the last week, he's like, I just can't seem to keep it together. I'm dropping my routines. I'm struggling. I'm this, I'm that. And I said, well, why don't you go and do this exercise to process some of these emotions? He goes, I can't do that. So I said, well, how many repetitions have you done of that? And he goes, well, not many. I said, how many? He goes, probably none. I'm like, so is it logical to do something 0 times and to be good at it? As men, we have this thing called the too hard bucket. It's like, oh, processing anger, tried it once, too hard. Oh, I'm ashamed, tried working through it, too hard. Mate, there is a massive cost to not fixing this. There is generational trauma. Like the shit that my father did or didn't teach me fucked me up good. I've got a 3.5-year-old. If I don't work on my generational trauma, if I don't work on my anger, my shame, my limiting beliefs, my fears, how I show up as a man after a stressful day, I'm fucking up my daughter. So I think a message to any man listening right now, if you are angry, if you're ashamed, if you're afraid, if you're guilty, if you work too much, if you yell at your family, think about the lasting repercussions on your family. On that note, you talked about childhood a lot in your videos online.
Yeah.
We'll drop your Instagram down below. How does a man unpack his childhood? So you mentioned being around other men. How does a man look within and bring that awareness to these issues?
Well, I think it starts with understanding what's happening now. So I just love the framework. It's very simple. King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Are you familiar with it? Very familiar
Love that
with it?
book.
Yeah, right. The book and the framework is so easy. But essentially, there's different archetypes, which are sort of like personality types within. However, what's really cool about shadow work is understanding that these archetypes are always playing on with inside your mind and they possess you, right? Your unconscious, right? Your unconscious, which is the nervous system, your subconscious, people know about it. Your subconscious is when you walk to the fridge and you open the fridge and you're like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
Your subconscious is the thing that's when you pick up your phone and you started scrolling and you're like, put my phone away. Why did I pull that out right now? I don't need this, right?
Yeah.
That's when and dreams, right? So that's when your subconscious is sort of working. But what we don't understand is that where we are unconscious is that one of these archetypes will start playing, it plays out behind the scenes without us even knowing, right? And most of the times it's the magician. However, with the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, you have each one of them can be in their fullness. So, which is when they're displayed in a healthy way. It's like, I've got a good relationship with each of these.
Just really quickly. So for someone who's listening right now, so when you say archetypes, for layman's terms, it's like, there are 4 different types of man that you can show up as.
Yep.
And these 4 different types happen without you realizing. It's like when you're driving, you look up from the dash, you're like, I haven't looked at the road.
Yeah.
So that's happening like a computer program.
Yeah.
So can you unpack what these 4 different identities are?
Yeah.
And then what are the positives and negatives? Because I think if men can hear, they'll go, that's me. Oh, sometimes that's me.
Yeah.
That's definitely me. So like for layman's terms, how would you break that down?
Yeah. So essentially they're called the 4 masculine archetypes. And there's so many archetypes.
Yeah.
But the 4 masculine ones are just like the different personalities that you have inside yourself, right?
So what are the different traits?
Yeah, I'll run through that. So, but essentially you've got all of them have positive sides and then they have like a shadow side to each
And
of them.
shadow's like the negative or like destructive side? That's what you mean by that?
Yep. So shadow is like the negative and destructive side. That's the one that's getting angry or the unconscious. When you're doing something that you don't want to be doing and you don't understand that it's there. Right?
That's the shadow.
That's
Good
the shadow,
definition, yeah.
right? But there's 2 different sides to the shadow. And I like to explain it that one's too much and one's not enough. And I like to explain it like a car, right? So essentially you are the car, right? You're a car. The king is the person who makes the decisions. The warrior is the gas pedal and the brake, right? So he can decide to brake, stop, and protect, or he can put the gas in the car and go and kick some ass. The magician is the GPS, right? That's when you're figuring out where you need to go, right? So essentially, a lot of guys in business are magicians, like through and through, because they're trying to plan, figure things out. They're going back between a magician and the king. And then the lover is the juice, right? It's the fuel. But what happens is in the lover archetype, when you're too much of a lover, you're clingy and needy, and you're like, oh, I need attention. I need attention. Why aren't you giving this thing to me? Like, why aren't you talking to me? Blah, blah, blah. When you're not enough lover, you're avoidant, you're shut down, right? When you're the king and you're too much of a king, you're very directive. You're a bit of a tyrant, you're bossy, demanding, do this, get this thing done, blah, blah, blah. And you're not considerate of other people's emotions. And that's when you'll get feedback like, oh, you don't care about anyone else. You're like, what do you mean? And it's like,
I'm looking after everyone.
I'm doing this for everyone else, right? And then on the negative side is like, that's when you're too passive in making your decisions. That's like people are like, oh, what do you want to do for dinner? What everyone else wants to do. What should we be doing here in the business? I mean, what does everyone else think, right? Instead of directing and leading. The warrior, too much, is you're hurting other people, right? You're hurting other people. You're putting your agenda too far forward. When you don't have enough warrior, you're hurting yourself. That's the self-sacrifice. The people pleaser, self-sacrifice. I'll just keep going. It's just me. I see this in retreats with men who, when we put them through a leadership exercise, they just get in there and just start, they just want to crush something. And they'll just like, it might be a workout or something intense. And you see them just like, they'll do more reps than everyone else and all this stuff because they're used to just putting everything on their shoulders, right? That's not enough warrior. And then the magician, too much magician, you're a manipulator, right? You manipulate things to try to get what you want and you blame. And then if you haven't got enough magician or enough GPS, you play the victim. Wasn't me. I didn't do that. Wasn't my thing. Blah, 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 blah. How dare you? Like, why would you say that thing to me? Like, that's not me. Blah, blah, blah. That's your fault. So that's how it sort of goes.
Love that. That's the best description I've ever heard of that principle. That's epic.
Yeah, thank you. But what's really cool is understanding that the lover fuels the warrior, right? So they're co-opposite.
Yeah.
And then the magician advises the king.
How do you explain that? Right.
So essentially it's like I would say it's very mystical in terms of like, if you've seen the movie Aladdin and Jafar and the Sultan, and Jafar is that evil magician who consults the Sultan, right? And tells him what to do and gets into his ear. So when you start noticing that you're being, a bit of a tyrant, you're being directive, you're like, why isn't shit working out the way that I want? Because I just want it to fucking happen. You're getting frustrated. Your magician's planting things behind the seeds that's making you be a victim or making you manipulate, right? Wow. Or being a bit of a control freak.
Yeah, so they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Same thing happens with the lover and the warrior, right? So what happens is if you don't have a healthy relationship with love, the warrior's got no juice, he's not going to show up. But the warrior has to be attacking or smashing something. So what you'll notice is if you're not, getting things done, you're not taking complete action, there's no passion or no love. It doesn't have to be a relationship. You just might fall out of love with what you do. You're like, oh, I don't love this at the moment. Like there's no passion here. And that can be done, shame and anger can put a block over your heart so that the lover won't activate. But what's really cool is when you can activate the lover and the warrior really well, the king wakes up in his fullness. So people think, oh, I need to learn better leadership. I need to do this, blah, blah, blah. I spoke to some of Australia's best leadership trainers and they distilled it down for me and they just said, Corey, leadership is just a direct reflection of emotional intelligence. That is it. That is it. I was like, okay, right, how do I do this? So understanding emotional intelligence, being able to communicate your emotions and work on your nervous system and feel passion for something. That's why it's so important to work through your shame. That's why it's so important to work through guilt and anger. Because when you feel that passion, you open your heart up, your warrior turns on, your king wakes up, makes decisions. Tony Robbins is a great example of this. When I was watching him on stage, I was like, man, this guy's lover is on, right? He's telling these emotional stories. He's not getting like over emotional and like crying and stuff, but you can see him like feeling so much for everyone and just like his story and everyone in the room and all this stuff. And he's just like out here and leading and he's really fighting for a cause and lifting everyone up. And it's like, man, his heart is so open. He's so open. He's got a cause that he is fighting for and he is leading so well in this position. It's like, man, we can all get a piece of that. But the archetypes work like traffic lights. So essentially it's like, it sort of works like a DNA a little bit, depending on your environment and situation and where you're at. You can be green, yellow, or red. Red, which means they're turned off. Yellow means they're a little bit on, and then green means they're completely on. So depending on your environment situation will depend on which ones are on. And essentially you'd like them all to be green, but in a healthy way so that you can, get the king to really lead you so that your car can get to the destination of where it needs to go.
So powerful, man. And it comes back to awareness. So you might be the king at work. You're not the tyrant. You're making decisions. You're taking the right action. Go, go, go. Let's go to war team. And then you come home and you're like, all right, wife, let's fucking get the dishes done and let's fucking go. I got a plan. And she's like, fuck you.
Turn the lever on, baby.
Exactly. So I think a lot of high performing men, they're stuck in this place where they're trying to be the same person everywhere.
Yeah.
And really leadership is emotional intelligence, which also means adaptability. Like, how am I going to show up in this situation? Am I going to be more empathetic? All right, in this situation, I've got to fire someone. I've got to be empathetic, but also stern. All right, my kids aren't listening. I've got to be stern, but also a bit more understanding. As men, you've got to be malleable. You've got to be malleable to succeed. Now, one thing that we haven't touched on is the power of mum and dad in these situations, right? So we've talked about shame. We've talked about guilt. We've talked about all the different masculine archetypes and how this trauma from our childhood can impact how we show up now. What does the role of our mother and father have to play here in how we're showing up today?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. So the basic way to explain it, from what I've learned, is we just learn everything that we get from our parents, and we take them on board, and that conditions our personality. And then essentially, depending on the relationship that we have with our parents and what it was like, is just how we act is going to be essentially the way that they taught us, right? So some amazing things that I got from my dad, understanding was like, he's the hardest worker I've ever met. Still is. He just crushes it. Like, it's just intense to watch him. But he was really shut down, really avoidant, and couldn't speak with his emotions at all. And he was very devalidating, right? So what would happen is, sometimes I'd ring dad with the problem. He'd be like, don't worry about it, mate. Don't worry about it, right? And just understanding that is, if you start doing that to your kids or you start doing that to your employees, you're not validating how they feel. And the role of a father in a fathership relationship to their parents, his sole, from what I've researched, and this is what I believe to be true, his sole purpose is just to validate them, right? That's it. So instead of saying, don't worry about that, mate, like, don't worry about whatever it is, it's like, that'd be challenging. I can see why you feel confused or lost or frustrated.
So it's not agreeing with them and saying, not you're right. It's, I can see why you might be feeling that way. Big distinction, I think, for the listener.
Big distinction,
yeah,
right? It's not like you're right or anything. It's just, being able to put yourself in their shoes and just go, yeah, well, if I was there, I'd feel like that too. And they go, because then what happens is people start to be able to confirm beliefs about themselves, right? And when they have that, then they start to make their beliefs true. And if you're coming from a position of, validation rather than telling them what to do, they're starting to build their own beliefs for what they believe to be true, right? So what I found growing up is that, a lot of my beliefs weren't my own beliefs. They were my mum's and my dad's. And my mum was the opposite. She was very like clingy. She's very this, too much attention, like too much. I was like, like mum, fuck off. You know what I mean? A little bit like that. So it's just because she was like a proud parent, but it was just like, as like growing up as a kid, and it was too much. So for me, I developed this like mechanism. It was really interesting. Like in relationship, I didn't understand, like anytime someone was soft or really feminine or started to like melt in front of me, like in relationships, I'd be like, oh, fuck that. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? That's cringe as hell. Like, I don't want that. And that was because I couldn't deal with any of the softness because of, mum would try to be soft towards me in a way. For me, that felt too much. So I had this conditioning pattern that when a woman would try to open up to me, when she tried to be soft to me and be in her feminine, I just shut it down. I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? No way. Then as I get older, I'm like, I want that so bad. Like I want that. I want to be able to want to feel that, that recharging energy, right? That comes from that. So in a simple way of putting it, like we just develop these patterns, and then it's up to us to figure out what we believe is true and what we believe is not true. Nietzsche talked about this in one of his theories in his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And he talks about it in terms of like our developmental stages as humans go from camel to lion to child, right? And essentially the camel is the person who has all these beliefs, all these bags and things that it carries around, and it's all beliefs of everyone else that is their own, right? So I use the analogy of when you put your hand over your mouth to sneeze, are you doing that because everyone else does it, or are you doing it because it's gross and you don't want to spread germs everywhere, right?
It's a good question.
Right.
I would say probably the second one, but, but it might be the first. Yeah.
Well, nervous system, right? You might just go like this, but it's like, what am I choosing to do? Like, I'm going to choose to put my hand over my mouth when I sneeze because it's gross, right? Yeah. Not because everyone else does it.
Yeah.
The second phase is turning into a lion. And we have this challenge that we like to do in our community. It's just called the no challenge. and it's really difficult. And we start challenging, like testing people straight away, where you have to say no to everyone and everything for a week straight. Everything. Absolutely everything. And you can say yes after, you just have to say no first. That's the challenge, right? Everything, every deal, every client, every person, whatever it is, you just say no first and wait. And you want to notice the discomfort. It's like a meditation, how we treat it. You observe yourself and just notice what happens within that no. We've had some wild shit happen, by the way. Like people have just like,
honey, do you want a blowjob? No.
yeah, fuck. Yeah, right. But what will happen is like in that situation, she'll say no and she'll be like, oh, he doesn't want a blowjob from me. You know, sometimes they're like, are you sure? And then like turn something on, whatever it is. And then there might be a push and pull play there where it's like, what the hell? I'm getting more attention right now.
Yeah.
We notice that people start to get more attention when they start to say no to things.
Yeah.
And the thing is you can just say yes the second after if you wanted to, or you just notice what happens in that moment, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we've seen people's teams like in business, because what happens a lot of men in King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, they haven't got enough like healthy warrior. So they'll self-sacrifice themselves all the time. And when they start saying no to people in their team starts picking up all the act. They start saying no to their clients start paying them more. And then most of the time, all the financial stress that was happening and the time stress just starts disappearing. Like it's insane, like from what we see. But we do that so that people start to get clear on what they believe is true and what is not true. And Nietzsche talks about it. He's like, you know, the role of the lion is to slay the dragon, who every scale on the dragon's body is you should do this or you should do that, right? And then what happens is he says that the goal, once you've done that, is to get into the state of having the mindset of a child, which is really pure, which has its own decisions. It does what it wants. It knows what it wants. When you look at like a child, it's like, I want that thing. And it just wants it, right?
Certainty.
Yes. And what he says, I could quote this right, is, and I believe this, by the way, I think it's really true, is we want to discover the seriousness that a child has when they're at play for those reasons. And it's interesting because he says like old people will get that, you know, because they will play seriously and muck around seriously without having the opinions of anyone else or anyone else's beliefs. So there's another quote that comes in this and I really love it. And it's, those were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music.
Powerful.
Yeah.
I think as men, we believe that life was going to be easier, right? We believe that we were going to have more money and more success and more connection. And then you go into being a man and you realize it's fucking hard. And you go to war every day. You wake up exhausted. You're stressed out. You're putting out fires all day. And then you come home to a war zone where there's no passion or love. And that's 80% of men's reality.
And it doesn't have to be. Like
it doesn't have to be.
It really doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. But the problem is we allow it to be.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you're a man experiencing that right now, it all comes back to what you just shared, which is your belief systems. Your beliefs dictate all your behavior. Beliefs are just sentences in your head. I can't do that. The dishes should be done. I need to work. And that comes from our childhood and trauma. But then those beliefs create emotions. Shame, anger, fear, and then those emotions fuel actions. And it's this vicious cycle. Belief, sentences in my head, emotions, negative actions. And then we go through that and we go, where the fuck did the last 10 years go? Right? It's absolutely wild. Now, one thing that you just mentioned with your parents is that the relationships you have with them impact these beliefs, right? So as a man, you're unpacking your beliefs, you're unpacking these things that aren't working in your life, you're bringing awareness to it. Yeah. How do you then start setting those 3 boundaries? Because you mentioned mental, emotional, and physical boundaries. Yeah. I personally believe as a man, before you start asking for boundaries with your team, with your partner, with your kids, you got to upgrade yourself, right? It's like, I want you to change. I've got boundaries. I'm awake now. I listened to a podcast with Corey. It was fucking awesome. Babe, I'm a fucking king. Let's get shit done. Yeah. It's like, dude, you've been fucked up for 30 years. Yeah. Right? So how do you set those boundaries without being pushy and being a tyrant? How do you work on yourself?
Yeah, I really like that. Well, one is I just like to put in the words is like create who you want to become. Like another Nietzsche quote. I love reading Nietzsche. I've read a lot of old school philosophy. I love it. And it's just this quote. It's very profound when you think about it. It's just become who you are. I've just been thinking about that a lot. It's like become who you are. Because when I first listened to that, it didn't really make sense to me. I'm like, what do you mean become who you are? Like I am who I am. And shouldn't everyone just like me for me? Like, you know what I mean? And that's like simp attitude, that is. It's like become who you are. But I like to take it as, you know, create who you want to become. And that's just like understanding, visualizing. It's like, who is it that I want to be? Because you can have like, especially when you talk to anyone who's had any sort of mild success. Like at one stage, I was living at this really beautiful place, Talabudra Creek, 40 steps, get onto the beach. You know what I mean? It's fantastic. Walk, get a coffee every day. Like, I've got this beautiful jacked body. Like I had hot miso. Like everything was fantastic. And I was like, I'm not fulfilled. I was like, fuck.
Yeah, what's wrong with
I
me?
thought I'd get here. I thought like, this would be like, I thought I'd be so happy and thrilled, but I'm like worse than I've ever been. Like, what the hell is going on? Right. But what I noticed in those times when I talked about integrity before was I'm still not living in integrity with who I want to be, not what who I want to be has. So when you start living integral with that and you feel proud of yourself for how you're showing up, like, I think that's just really the key. But you don't know how to show up or what to do until you literally just write it down. And I think it's really simple. It's like, who do I want to be, right? And sometimes it's an interesting question to ask other people to be like, hey, man, do you know who I want to be? Right? You have to talk with people to figure out who it is that you want to be. And when you start mirroring and having conversations with people for what you want to create, you start to create that, you live in alignment with that. And then when you start to feel, that's how you start setting the standard, right? It's purely integrity. You feel more confident. You like who you are socially around other people, right? People need people. So when you go to a gathering, when you go to an event, when you're managing something with your team and you're showing up in a way when you're like, oh, I like who this guy is right now. Like, this is that guy. Can you do that as well around people who you don't know? Like, can I be as comfortable as what I am around my family and my team as someone else's, and really be that guy? Because you know that, you may be wearing some masks. If you go somewhere else and you're like, oh, I can't, for some reason, I can't just get into being me right now. It's like, well, you've created some mechanisms that are preventing you from doing that. So that's a good signal. This is just a symptom and a signal to know that, when you're really clear on who you want to be, you can go to another group or somewhere else and you still feel just as calm there as what you do in your own kingdom.
Yeah.
Right? That's like the best symptom for it. And that's like, cool. I'm living in line with me and how I want to set the standard. I'm happy with that. So obviously leading by example first, right? It's not telling people what to do. It's like, look at, what I'm doing and how I'm being. And that gives you the confidence before, as you mentioned, like setting boundaries. I think that's a really good example. But setting boundaries, is creating the space so that you can be that guy as well. Because a guy who knows who he is, let's say some people are having a conversation and it's something triggering, it's very controversial, and it's like, wow, what are these guys talking about? Hey guys, I don't want to entertain this conversation. It's just not a part of, who I am. Can we talk about something else?
That takes a lot of courage.
That's a lot of courage.
Instead of just bitching and moaning with the boys at the pub.
Yep. That is high level mental boundaries.
Yeah.
That's mental boundaries in here like that, right? So it's like, hey guys, I don't want to talk about this. You know what I mean? Strong emotional boundaries is, except could be is like in a relationship, and it's like, just knowing that you feel a certain way, and to protect your own boundaries, you might, instead of saying something or speaking up or emotionally dumping on someone else, you just don't say anything. Sometimes it's like, all right, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take what I'm feeling right now into a place that's way more appropriate, and just like know that it's here, pause, have good emotional control, not say anything, and then wait. And then when you talk to the boys or talk to someone who you trust or someone who you care about, or a men's group, whatever it is, hey guys, I'd love to be able to share some of this shit that come up and talk about it, right? And it's the same thing as well with good emotional boundaries. When someone's dumping on you or manipulating on you, having good emotional boundaries is like, I hear you, understand where you're coming from. I need to take some time to process this. I don't want to talk about it right now. I'd like you to respect that. And let's talk about it soon. I need to think about it.
A lot of men will struggle with that.
Struggle with that too.
If I can share a story, like I picked up a lot of anger from my father, and it cost me my first marriage, and it led to my current marriage with Rosie, 8 years together. And when we used to get into arguments, I'd yell and raise my voice and get angry because I felt attacked.
Yeah.
About 3 years ago, I'd been working on myself, doing retreats, doing the work, and my wife was just being nasty. She was being angry. She was yelling at our daughter. She was yelling at me. I was in the kitchen trying to help her with dinner. I was helping around the house. I'd had a stressful as fuck day. Didn't want to do it. And she's just yelling at our daughter, and she's speaking pretty nasty to me. And in the past, what I would have done is I would have gone like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I'm trying to help out. I've had a shit day. Like, get your shit together. But I could see she was upset. and she said something snappy. She's like, I don't know what you want from me, or like blah, 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 just angry. So I walked over to my wife and got down to her level on the little kiddie table. And I looked her in the eyes and I was like, Rosie, I understand you're upset. I know you've had a stressful day, stressful week, stressful year. I appreciate that. I'm just trying to help you. And I also don't get to be spoken to like that. So if you want me, I'm going to be over here. I'm here to help.
Yeah.
And it was just calm. And she was angry. She was seething because she felt attacked. But because of the tonality and because of the level and because it was just like, it was from a place of love, I went back to the kitchen. I shit you not, 5 minutes later, she's giggling, she's laughing, she's hugging me, she's apologizing, she's being a better mother. That was a turning point for me as a man. I was like, holy shit, the old strategy doesn't work, right? And is that what you mean by emotional intelligence?
Yeah, definitely.
Being able to go, I'm angry. I was angry.
Yeah.
I was hurt.
So,
but I was calming myself, you know?
Yeah, like an absolute stud. By the way.
It doesn't always happen that
like
way.
A stud. Doesn't always, right? You know what I mean? You increase your ratio of getting better at it.
Yeah.
But the word for that is called attunement.
Attunement.
The word for that is attunement, right? And when you're thinking of nervous system, it's like her nervous system is super reactive and chaotic right now. You're attuning yourself to her nervous system so that she can regulate. And when she feels regulate, because when a woman's at a home, right, she's always attuning herself to your nervous system, right? So she's always trying to match you, like, where's he at? Where's he at? Because women have that, spatial thing where they're caring about how everyone feels all the time. So the second that you get up, she's gonna be up, right?
Yeah.
So the attunement of you could bringing it back down and attuning yourself to her, and she goes, she can like breathe, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of awareness to do that. Like if I wasn't eating well, exercising, journaling, getting myself together, I would have let that stress of the day unload on her. And that takes a lot of self-work and self-mastery. I want to jump back to this idea of what do I want? Who do I need to become in the kingdom? A lot of men don't know what they want. This destroys men's lives. It almost destroyed mine. So about 4 years ago, we had our first daughter. We had 3 properties. I had the money, the house, the car, the family I'd always wanted. And then I stopped eating well, stopped exercising, got a dad bod. My energy was through the floor and I started getting really depressed. And about 6 months into that, I went to the doctor and I said, I've got depression. He goes, maybe, maybe not. Have you talked to a psychologist? I said, yes, hadn't. He goes, okay, well, what do you want me to do? I'm like, I want some pills. He goes, here you go. So I took an antidepressant at like 12 p.m. and at 1 p.m. my eyes couldn't stay open. And the next day I woke up and threw them in the bin. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? So then I started working on myself, exercising, eating well, felt a bit better. But I realized it wasn't just the routines and my internal state. It was the fact that I didn't have a vision. Like I didn't know what I wanted anymore. I had the family, I had the house, I had the car, like most successful men. And I was like, now what? Like, who am I when I'm not a father, when I'm not a husband, when I'm not a business owner? Who the fuck is Toni? And I realized I didn't know. And I didn't know what I actually wanted. I thought I wanted things, but it wasn't enough.
What did you actually want?
Freedom, mental freedom, emotional freedom, financial freedom. So the question I have for you is, there are a lot of men who can relate to that story. You've worked with tons, successful guys, $10 million business, unfulfilled, beautiful wife, unfulfilled. How does a man actually figure out what he wants and who he needs to become? Because he'll say, I want a car. It's not what that, how do you figure it out? Like,
I actually want to know from your perspective on that. Like, what did you do? Because you said you wanted financial, mental, and what was the other freedom?
Emotional freedom. And I think there's 4 types of freedom: time freedom, mental freedom, emotional freedom, financial freedom.
Which ones didn't you have?
Mental and emotional freedom.
Okay.
Like, if you think about it, if you're a typical Australian man, it might be hard for you. You might be struggling to pay the bills, but life's not that terrible if you really think about it.
Yeah, it's really not.
The terror comes from the negative thoughts and the emotions that just destroy you each day. The stress, the pressure, the guilt, the shame, the anger. If you're not free from those things, you can't have peace.
Yeah.
There's no joy and peace.
Yeah.
But a lot of men think they want to make money to achieve joy and peace.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 So how would you unpack that?
So I think that comes to, because I have a different model compared to what you've got with working with freedom. And I think that's amazing, by the way. It's so handy to highlight like which ones are coming up. So yeah, you got this freedom, but you haven't got these. Like, I think that's absolutely great because it gives you a really good place of like, oh, cool, I've got the stuff. Now I can just work on what I need to work on and it gets to be really fun, right?
Yeah.
See, I think for me, what's really cool to understand is I like to ask the question, what hierarchies are you climbing? And actually write down, because like, men, we feel great when we're succeeding in areas, right? Any time of success, anytime we win, anytime that we achieve something, like we feel fantastic. I like listing out is, okay, what hierarchies are we climbing, right? So like for you, it's like there's a podcast climbing, there's a podcast hierarchy that you're climbing. There's men's coaching hierarchy that you're climbing. There's like other business stuff that you're climbing. There's a family type, you're climbing a hierarchy in that one. Your own self-growth and your self-development, right? So it's like you're growing like in that area.
Investments as well as a big one. So these are like the priorities you mean? Is that what you mean by hierarchy?
Priorities. It's like legitimate hierarchies that
what do you mean by that?
Like can climb. Yeah. So a hierarchy is a state where it's like, let's say, for example, Tony Robbins has the best ideal family, right? It's like, I want to have a family like that, right? So if you're putting yourself in like a family type of hierarchy, like, okay, so what are the common families at down the bottom? Where is Tony Robbins at as a scale? And I want to grow to climb that hierarchy, and I want to have as good as family dynamic as he is.
So it's making that the standard.
So yeah. But you're competing in it, right? Knowing that you're not there yet. Same as a bodybuilding competition. So I compete in bodybuilding comps, right? Like there's a hierarchy there, right? You've got the top dog, the guy who's won Australian comps, USA comp, whatever it is. It's like, okay, I'm competing against these guys. I want to get to the top of the hierarchy. Same with podcasting. Who's the number one podcaster in Australia for whatever the category that you've chosen, right? You want to climb that hierarchy. So when you sit down and just like figure out, okay, what hierarchies am I climbing, and what does the top goal look like, the high end of the hierarchy, and how can I climb them to the best of my ability? Not with the expectation of getting to the complete top, because that's putting too much expectations on, but just actually enjoying the journey of climbing that hierarchy. And I think just listing them out and filtering them, when you start progressing towards, and you notice that you're progressing and you're moving, because it's the same thing in business, right? So someone's like, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So it's like that happens with yourself. It's like if you're not growing in the areas that you want to be growing in, then
that's what happened. I was depressed as fuck because I wasn't growing. I felt like stagnant. I'm like, why am I so unhappy? And I think a lot of men can relate to that.
Yeah.
So you'd say list out the hierarchies of what you're working towards.
You want to climb
as a man.
Yeah, as a climb, and then start climbing them, right? So like we play badminton with my friends. Now that's not a hierarchy I want to climb, right?
It's fun.
But it's fun. However, there's like a micro hierarchy in there with like just the friends, like who's going to be the best, right? But like, it's not like a hierarchy that I'm taking seriously that I want to climb. It's just a little bit of fun, and then we'll play something else or whatever it is. But you want to get clear on the main ones, right? The main ones that you want to climb, and start climbing them. So it's that, or the other model that I really like going through is just going through the hero's journey. So the hero's journey is like the 16, 17 step process. That was any movie that you've watched, like Star Wars, or have you seen Dune?
Yeah, I love Dune.
Do you know the second Dune?
Yeah.
How good is that movie?
Amazing movie.
Right. So the reason that it's so good is it follows the hero's journey perfectly. And I've been studying the hero's journey for like 5-6 years. So when I was watching Dune, I was just like, oh, it's just hitting every step of the hero's journey. This is so good. That's why it's so entertaining. That's why Harry Potter's good. That's why Star Wars is good.
Lord of the Rings.
That's why Lord of the Rings is great. Follows it perfectly. And that's why Dune's so good. But it's really interesting because what's the guy's name who created Star Wars again?
George Lucas.
George Lucas. Yeah, so he invited Joseph Campbell, the creator of the hero's journey, and said, look, I made a movie for you, and invited him to the screening, and they watched it together. And Joseph said to George afterwards, he went like, this is incredible. Like, you've nailed it, in terms of all the archetypal stages, whatever it is. Right now, I'm not going to get into it because it's a huge model and it's really hectic to go through. But what I just want to mention is on that is like, one thing about the hero's journey is when you map out your steps of understanding when the journey that you want to go on, the challenges that you're going to face, who you're going to become in that process, and how you can bring that back to your family and your loved ones. And you understand what you're doing now what you're doing now is just a part of that journey. That takes, because it's cliche and people are like, oh, enjoy the journey that you're on, right? And it's like, I don't fucking know what journey I'm on. You can write it down and you can see it.
Yeah.
And then when you see it and you're like, oh, this thing here with the tax debt, and the family going like this, and this thing happening, and the business falling down, and these 3 employees that left me when they were supposed to stay on, and this guy who fucked up this job, whatever it is. Like, all of this is teaching me skills to get me to the next phase in my hero's journey, so that when I, get to the quote unquote promised land, which is just a state of fulfillment in yourself, you can bring that energy back to your family and loved ones, and you can bear so much more than you ever thought that you can bear, because you know who you are and you believe in yourself.
And that is a place every man gets to feel I wouldn't necessarily say deserves, because that's a sense of entitlement, but every man gets to be in a place where they feel peace, purpose, joy, and connection, but it doesn't come naturally. No one's coming to save you. It's going to require you getting clear on what are your hierarchies to work towards. It's going to require discomfort, pain, struggle, failure. And then one thing that we teach our clients is, how can this failure and this pain be an opportunity to learn and grow?
Oh, exactly.
Because life's a video game, right? It's like you're just leveling up and slaying new dragons. You talked about the scales.
Yeah. Well, what is the video game? It's just the thing that goes on the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell had this beautiful quote. And he just said, I believe a good life is just one hero's journey lived after the next.
Yeah.
Right. So when you are stuck at that moment, when you're like, oh, I need to get, I feel depressed right now, and I need to get on, meds or whatever it is, and I'm going to take this, is just like, you weren't accepting the next hero's journey that was ready for you at that time. And it's really crazy, like, knowing all of this, because like the last few months I've been going through it in one of like the biggest times ever. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't realize how much I've had to be going through it right now. This is intense. Yeah. But just witnessing it and knowing what's been going on, I've been able to find joy in grief. I've been able to find purpose in what would the word be? Purpose in pain, right? So that, and all of these different things have been coming up, and I've been able to feel through it, navigate, and really still be exactly who I want to be in the process without putting crazy amounts of pressure and stress on myself that cause stupid amounts of anxiety and all the rest of it. And I'm like, wow, this is just one problem to solve after another. This is the journey, and holy hell, look at how strong I'm becoming through this entire process. Yeah. And it's so fucking interesting, because like me 7 years ago would have just completely crumbled. Like completely crumbled. And instead I've been watching myself through this whole time. Even whilst I'm going through something, I'm like, oh man, I'm so fucking proud of you. Yeah. Like, oh man, I'm so proud of you. And when I talk to people, no matter where they're at, what they're doing, sometimes I'm like, I wish that you could experience the freedom that I feel right now, even in the thick of it. Like even in the thick of it.
It's really hard as a man. As a man, it's freaking hard to get through. And there is so much power in being able to look at all your challenges and pains and problems from a frame of gratitude. It's like, oh my God, this is so fucking hard, and I'm so grateful for it. Oh my God, another challenge, another one. It comes in threes. When it rains, it pours. Thank you for this. It's helping me become better. The weight doesn't get any lighter. It's like you've got a barbell on your back and you're constantly adding 45-pound, 20-kilo plates, but you get stronger. And that's the cool thing about being a man who's been through a lot of challenges. You look back 5 years ago, the things that you deal with now are 10 times harder than what would have crumbled you back then. Oh, man. And that creates confidence, right? So if you are a man listening to this and you are going through pain right now, relationship issues, business stress, tax debt, how is it happening for you? How is it making you stronger? That's responsibility. Now, let's say you're one of these guys listening. You're like, cool. So I write down my hierarchy of what I'm chasing, my freedom. But man, I'm busy. Like I work 60 hours a week. I got to look after the kids. I mean, haven't worked out in a few years. Like it's a lot. How am I going to balance all this? What do you say to that, man?
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? It's a really good point. But essentially what that person's in is, I would say, like, they're not in the position of power that they'd like to be in. And the reason that they're doing it is because they're self-sacrificing. So for most of the guys in that position, is they have this they don't understand that they're actually people pleasing in the moment, and they're sacrificing themselves, and they don't know how to say no, right? So that's logistically what's going on. But to a guy that's in that position, I just say, keep going until everything burns down, until you feel enough pain, until it gets bad enough that you actually have to do something about it. Keep going and see how it goes.
Sounds funny when you say it out loud, eh?
Yeah, but it's true. It's like you keep going, wait until everything burns down. Your wife leaves you, your kids leave you. Next minute she's suing you, you're yelling at each other. You get triggered at everything that's happening. You have to turn to drugs and alcohol or something just to numb something that's bad enough. And the next minute your business starts going down. Employees aren't operating as best as they can for you. And next minute you're stressed out of your eyeballs. You put on a bunch of fat. And the next minute you're in the doctors because you got a cancer scare because of the stress that's been coming into your nervous system. Happened to my dad, and I saved his fucking life. He come to me and he said, he's like, oh, I got this like a cancer scare, been working out like crazy. And I was just like, it was before I was about to move into a house that I bought with, I was moving in with one of my ex-girlfriends. And so I went and stayed with dad for a couple of months. And I was like, eat like me, train like me, do what I do. Like, you can do everything that I fucking do, and start practicing fasting and start like taking care of yourself and your mental health. Not kidding, when he had his bloods tested and they were just fucked, right? completely wrecked, like cholesterol, like crazy. His testosterone down, cancer markers all over the place. Within 6 months, they were perfect. Not one cell of cancer in there. Perfect. All his blood tests, the doctors went, well, why are you even here? And he went, what? He was like, what the hell? And it's just like, proof goes to show, like, it had to get bad enough for him to do it before he started taking on. I had to take his son to move into his home with him to show him what to do before he started kicking on. And I can say it's been like 5 years since then, and he is crushing it. He's the richest he's ever been in his business. He's the healthiest he's ever been. He's the strongest he's ever been. He could text me last week. He's like, I'm going to compete in a bodybuilding show next year. He's doing that. He has a fantastic relationship with his partner. Like, he's killing it in all areas, all of them, because he decided to, make that change of like, you know what? I'm going to put me first. Mm-hmm. Oxygen mask on me before the kid. So
that's beautiful, man. Well done. That's so powerful.
Thank you, bro. I'm very proud of that. Yeah.
So ultimately, he got to that point of pain. If someone's listening to this right now, do an order of your life. Like, what's not working in my marriage or relationship, in my body, in my mind, in my business or career, and get to the raw truth of what will happen if you don't change. Because we have the later pain, right? Divorce, heart attack, cancer. And then we have the now pain, which is doing something about it.
Yeah.
And so many of us ignore that later pain because the now pain's too big.
Yeah.
The later pain's almost always greater, brother. Yeah. It's almost always greater.
There's a really good exercise for this that you can do, right? Quick, take you 5-10 minutes, right? Go stand in front of a full body mirror in your undies or naked and just look at yourself for 5 to 10 minutes. Look at yourself and notice when you're looking at yourself where your eyes try to divert. And you'll start noticing like, oh, fuck. Like, anytime that you can't completely look at yourself, you might look at him and just be like, do you love yourself or do you not? Do you like the guy that you see? Do you like the body that is reflected in the mirror? Because your body is just a reflection of who you are, your habits, your routines and everything. So what you look like is going to show up. And you may have as well. You could be someone who has perfect body, perfect everything, but you had like a prostitute addiction or some shit years ago and you go look at yourself and you go, I can't fucking look at myself in the mirror. Yeah. Why can't I do this? Right? It will kind of show all. This is like some hardcore shadow work. And you notice that, just go stand and look and just see what happens. Right?
And it's not just the body, it's the eyes. Like, I remember looking at my eyes a few years ago and I looked so defeated and stressed and down. I'm like, what am I doing? I've got a 6-pack, but I feel like a piece of shit. It's such a powerful exercise. That's really amazing.
Go look in the mirror and see what comes up. And then hopefully for some men, because we do get motivated by pain and pleasure, you'll go, all right, I'm going to fucking do something about this.
Yep.
And do something about it.
Amazing. So your company is called Set the Standard, and I'd love to close off with some practical tools that people can take away, men can take away and start implementing today. So if you were to break down a 3, 5, 10 step-by-step method, I know you've got your own method. We'll put you down below for people to find you. But if someone can leave this podcast, go, this sounds great, Corey. I want to change. I want to set a new standard for my life. I want to win as a man.
Yeah.
How would you go through that process? What would you do step by step?
Well, we've got heaps. Like, there's so many they can go through to
what could they take from today?
Here's one that they can use from today. And I think it's mapping out your own heaven and your own hell. So what I would say is go through from ages of 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, right? And just write down a bunch of negative shit that has happened that you're like, okay, these are some negative memories that I have in that time, how they contributed to now. And then ask yourself the question in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, if you keep them, what's your life going to look like?
Yeah.
Right. So just map that out. It's like,
get real.
And get real with it. And be honest and don't look away. And you're not allowed to say death. A lot of guys be like, oh yeah, 10, 20 years from now, I'd probably like end it. And it's like, that's cheating, bro. Look at it. I don't care how fucking bad it is. Look at it. Right. So when you look at it, because guys try to avoid, that's that avoidance pattern, right? You look at it and you go, oh, that's nasty. You've got motivation to run away from, right? It's not as strong as poor motivation, but it's still motivation. That's like, I don't want that, right? I get it. And then you want to map out your heaven. If you change all of your habits and processes to exactly who you want to be right now, what do they look like? How does he show up? Most of the time, it's very small, right? It's very small. It's just like wakes up earlier, trains, doesn't get reactive at his partner, and can lead his team really well. Like, that's literally it. Literally it, right? So, okay. So if I can do that right now, which, you get a coach, join a men's group, whatever it is, so that you can be held accountable to do that. See a therapist, whatever. If I do that right now go 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50, and you'd be like, man, the compound that happens is you'll go, I want that so bad.
Mm.
Like everything and who I am in that. And I get to be this person and the grandkids and all the rest of it and the admiration and just the fun and the open-heartedness that I get to have with people. Holy hell. Now you're like, I want this thing. So you have two types of motivations that are motivating you to essentially keep working on yourself so that you can find that sense of fulfillment. And there's a real good book that I want to recommend, right, for guys here, especially around the boundaries things. It's called Hold On to Your Nuts.
I love
right?
it.
NUTS. It's like non-negotiable something terms and something else is what it means. But the book is so good for boundary setting, especially in relationship. It's an audio book, so you can listen to it when you're like driving to work or anything like that. Hold On to Your Nuts. It's got a squirrel on the front. Fantastic book to read if you want to start implementing boundaries.
I love that so much. So that exercise, basically 10, 20, 30, 40, what happened that fucked you up? What was negative? What's the consequences 10, 20, 30 years in the future?
Yep.
And then what would it look like if you change these small little things? Who do you want to be? How do you want your life to look? And then what's that going to create for you?
To 50 years in the future.
And so many men, they do business planning, but they will never do this for themselves.
Dude.
That guy spoke about yesterday that I was coaching, 800K profit currently. We're going to take him to 1.2 million profit in the next 6 months. And he's like, is that possible? Absolutely. So then what I did is I got onto ChatGPT and I showed him if he invested 500K a year, which he can afford to, and put it into these assets at 20%, in 10 years, he'll have $15.6 million, while also communicating better, having a six-pack, being fit, being healthy, and retiring at 58. And he's like, that's possible? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, fuck yeah. And I'm like, should we do it? And he goes, yeah. But we don't think this way. So that exercise you just gave is an example of how somebody at home can actually do that for themselves. Very powerful.
Yeah.
Brother, this has been an amazing conversation. I would love to get you back on to talk about the hero's journey for the full podcast.
Yeah, it's
probably do this once a month. But is there any final advice you'd like to give our listeners at home who want to be better men, better partners, better fathers?
I'll just speak to what you said beforehand. Is I had to realize for me how much when I was working in corporate, I got a corporate job into organizational development, did a trade, done all things as well. But when I got into that space, I just remember how much work people would put into running a business. So much. The risk management plans, human resources, leadership training, the budgets and all this stuff. Like I didn't realize leadership was like just in Australia its own, it's like a $6 billion industry or $16 billion. Something's crazy just on leadership, right? And I just had the realization of just imagine if you put this amount of effort into yourself.
So true.
Just leave it at that.
Yeah, so true. Amazing. Thank you so much, brother. This has been an honor. Appreciate you. Guys, go follow him down below and we'll see you for the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
If you're getting value from this podcast episode and you want to learn how you can have a better relationship, a better marriage, you can be a better father, husband, the man you know your family deserves, then it's very fucking hard to do that just by listening and getting fed information. Sure, this is valuable, but what's much more valuable is having a custom roadmap and a custom plan. And that's exactly what we do here at The Empowered Man. So if you want to learn how to fix your marriage, reconnect with your children, and find work-life balance, then that's exactly what we want to help you with. We'll help you make more money, working less hours, have that life you deserve by becoming unfuckwithable. Just tap the link down below in the description and go and book a coaching session with my Empowered Man team. On that session, we'll build your custom Empowered Man roadmap to fix your marriage, reconnect with your children, find work-life balance, and have the life you deserve. Click the link down below right now.